Hey JellyFishes, welcome back to another video. Let's talk about UFC 319, Driggers versus Hamza. Let's talk about the main event. So Driggers versus Hamza, this was a very non-competitive fight. You know, if you watch my video, I did mention that DDP was very strong, and I did believe he was going to get some reversals, which he did towards the end of the later rounds, and he was able to transition that into getting a dominant position. So I was right about that. But the thing is that what we didn't know is that we didn't think that Hamza was going to fight the way that he did. He fought very, 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 very intelligently. And you know, the fact of the matter is that everybody was saying this, that Driggers has never fought a true grappler. He's never fought a jiu-jitsu guy. He's never fought a wrestling guy. And now we see what happens when this guy fights a guy who's a pure grappler, whether it's a wrestler. And I really think that a really good jiu-jitsu guy as well would be able to recreate or maybe even submit Driggers Duplessis. And the honest answer to this is that Driggers Duplessis had, and I said this in my video. If you go watch my video of the full breakdown, I said that Driggers Duplessis has honestly had very favorable matchups leading into his title fights. He was fighting guys who were perfectly tailored for his style and way of fighting, and he's never fought a true grappler. I remember I did say that, you know, and I did say that Hamza winning by decision is not out of the realm of possibility. I did say that if you watched my last video, you know, and the fact of the matter is that DDP is never going to be a champion again, and I know that's not going to sit well with many people, but it's the truth. Guys like Imavov, Brandon Allen, Kyra Berhalo, and probably even Rainier DeRitter. I mean, all these guys, middleweight has a lot of amazing, great, even Fluffy Hernandez, you know, amazing, great grapplers and jiu-jitsu guys. And it was only a matter of time until somebody was able to crack that. Look, I'll be honest with you, Driggers Duplessis is a powerful guy. If anything we learned today is that Driggers is a powerful guy. The way he does his blitz, I literally said this in my analysis. I said the way that DDP does his blitz, he does it in such a way where, like, when he rushes at you, it's just so, he does a great job at angling for your head, and he's able to break and pass through your guard. But at the same time, Hamza didn't do well on the feet, but to be very fair, Hamza didn't care about going to the feet. He didn't care to strike with Driggers. He said, fuck that, I am grappling. And many people are giving Hamza shit saying, this is a crotch sniffer, you know, this guy sucks, this is such a boring way of fighting. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, shut up. You know why I'm saying shut up? This is mixed martial arts. Wrestling is a martial arts, jiu-jitsu is a martial arts, striking is a martial arts. All these things are martial arts, and this is mixed martial arts. If you hate wrestling so much, if you hate grappling so much, go watch kickboxing. Okay? That's what we have to say about that. Hamza dominated DDP. And honestly, dude, in all my time watching UFC, from watching old fights, title fights, I have never seen a performance like this. And I think I speak for a lot of people. I have never seen somebody get dominated round after round after round after round the way Driggers Duplessis was. I mean, you look at the total strikes over here, over 500 strikes to less than 50 for Duplessis. Now some of you are going to be like, oh, those were pitter pat. Shut the fuck up. I said he outstroked Driggers Duplessis. Okay? And I honestly believe that Driggers Duplessis and his team deserve every single last piece of this loss. You know, they were busy criticizing Hamza. He's going to gaze out. Hamza Chimaev is not good enough. All this bullshit, right? And then he got exposed. Like, Driggers Duplessis, you guys don't want to hear it. He is a fraud. He is not a complete mixed martial artist, and he fought guys who were stylistically very well for him. And when you look at the middleweight division now, and you remove Sean Strickland and Adesanya, the middleweight division is not looking good for Driggers Duplessis. When he looks at people like Anthony Hernandez, they can beat him. If he looks at people like, Imavov, he can beat them. Probably even Kyra Berhalo. And the thing I also want to mention in this is that Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion, he kind of looks small and for middleweight. You know, I think he's really small for middleweight. He did weigh in undersized, but I think that his powers will be amplified at welterweight because he is the bigger and stronger guy in that weight division. But over here against these middleweights, I think he's gonna struggle in terms of some of the physicality, because you could see that DDP did have the physicality advantage over Chimaev. You know, and we really got to see that. You know, I don't think that Chimaev should move up to 205. I think those guys are going to be way too big and also way too skilled. I mean, you look at something like Ankalaev. If he fights Ankalaev, I think that Chimaev could probably replicate a similar performance against Pereira, but let's be real, Pereira is not winning that fight with Magomed. And, you know, we have JDM fighting Islam, but shout out to Khamzat Chimaev. You know, he is the truth. And looking at the middleweight division, I don't really see Khamzat, you know, losing. I don't think he's going to lose to anybody necessarily. But I also want to add that what we saw against Driggers Duplessis by Khamzat, I think this was a very specific game plan that they had for Driggers Duplessis. You know, they did not want to go anywhere. This was an ultra safe, really amazing, really strategic, and they knew this was a guaranteed win. And Driggers Duplessis was made to look like a baby. He looked like a baby on the feet, on the ground. He looked like a helpless baby. Like I grapple some of my younger cousins like that, and they have no answers on the ground. It was bad. I mean, he got embarrassed and muddled up. And mentally, I'm telling you, mentally right now, Driggers Duplessis is crushed. And, you know, this is the fact of the matter is that the gravy train is over. You know, the Cinderella story wasn't going to last. You know, it just wasn't. And that's just something people don't want to accept. Listen, I still think Driggers Duplessis is an amazing fighter. I still think he's a great fighter. You know, I think he can beat a lot of low-level, one-dimensional strikers from the past, like Adesanya or even Sean Strickland. I believe he can. But I think for the people who are going to fight him now, anybody with any level of wrestling or jiu-jitsu or grappling pedigree over him, they're going to know exactly how to mix that up. And that's Driggers Duplessis. It was a very cute run. You know, Hala Whitney, it was cute, but it wasn't going to last. Shout out to Khamzat Chimaev. Now let's get to the next fight. Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. Now, I watched this fight. This fight was great. I mean, Aaron Pico's a really good fighter. You can see why this guy had the hype behind him. His boxing was amazing. His wrestling was wonderful. You know, but Lerone Murphy, dude, this is the thing that people don't get. And I always say this, but people always like want to debate against me. And I'm like, listen, when you're talking about somebody who's in the UFC, you know, who's winning and has been in the UFC for a while, you have to understand that winning in the UFC is a completely different story than winning in Bellator or PFL or Rising or any of these other organizations. The UFC is the best of the best. And Lerone Murphy is undefeated in the featherweight division, one of the most competitive divisions. You know, he beat what's his face, the beard guy punching back. Oh yeah, Emmett, he beat Emmett. He also beat Dan Ige. He beat a lot of people. He's undefeated, and he's super crafty. He's so crafty, so creative, and we really got to see that. Amazing, bro. I remember watching that shit live. I mean, he spin and he square right on the money hit Aaron Pico as he was trying to, you know, turn. He's like, you know, spinning back hit, you know, and it was perfect, picture perfect, wonderful, amazing. It was beautiful, you know, and I just think that Lerone Murphy is really getting up there, you know. Carlos Prates versus Jeff Neal. Wow, this fight was utter domination. You know, Jeff Neal just didn't have many answers. I mean, you know, the thing about Carlos Prates, what he does is that he's very long, he's very rangy, he's very fast at the same time. You know, against this fight, he was very elusive. He popped in and out, and he was evading the strikes of Jeff Neal. You know, Jeff Neal was trying to box him, but then Carlos Prates, he was throwing knees, he was landing on top, using that Muay Thai so amazing until he eventually had a vicious spinning elbow. It was vicious, and it completely flatlined Jeff Neal. You know, and I think that's the thing when you're trying to go up against a boxer. And we saw this with the Murphy and Aaron Pico fight. When you try to go up against a boxer, and you're a boxer trying to go up against somebody who's a very fluid striker in a way, you have to be careful of how you expose yourself, because unfortunately simply, this is not boxing. Yes, I'm not gonna lie, I picked Jeff Neal for this fight, because I had this thing where I was like, oh, boxers are so amazing, and boxers are amazing, but you need to stay safe while boxing and do it intelligently. And we saw with Jeff Neal, we saw with Aaron Pico, that if you fall into that too much, you will get your stuff cracked when trying to push the action when it's not there. And it was an amazing fight for Carlos Prates. He was really motivated going into this one, especially getting beat up by Ian Gary, but it was an amazing fight. We love it. Phenomenal performance. And now for the Jared Cannonier and MVP page and Michael Venom page fight, I really thought that Jared Cannonier was going to win this fight simply because, like, I thought he was going to wrestle MVP and just really have the same type of performance Ian Gary had against MVP. But on the feet, it's not close. MVP is so fast, so elusive, and no, he doesn't have a lot of power, but his timing and his speed is just second to none. It's just so hard to get. I mean, he was able to knock down Jared Cannonier in the first and the second round. And if it wasn't for that mistake he made towards the end, he still won anyways. But my point is, like, an amazing performance by MVP. I can see that his grappling is getting better, especially in the first and second rounds. And it was really a great fight, really amazing fight. MVP now, especially getting such a great win over Jared Cannonier, who's tried and tested middleweight. I think, I don't know who he should fight next. I mean, later on in this video, I'll talk about who I think these guys should fight next, but I'm just making a recap of all the fights. Now, Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Remember what I spoke about with proven, tried UFC fighters versus these new guys and how this happens? Exactly the same thing. Now, Tim Elliott is low-key a bum at flyweight, but the thing is that Tim Elliott has solid UFC wins under his belt. You understand? And Kai Asakura doesn't have any. And that's the thing I was saying in the Aaron Pico fight with Leon Murphy, saying that, like, winning in the UFC is a completely different ballgame compared to winning in Bellator, Ryzen, or whatever organization you came from. Like, it's a different level. And just Tim Elliott really proved that experience and just that greediness and toughness, and was able to get the submission. It was an amazing performance by him. Overall, in the main card, I got, in the main event, I did pick Hamzat, so I got that right. Leon Murphy, I got that right. Jeff Neal, I got that wrong. Jared Cannonier, I got that wrong. And, Kai Asakura and Tim Elliott, I did pick Kai Asakura. I got gaslit by all these other MMA YouTubers into picking, but had I just stuck to my original train of thought. So overall, I went, I think, 2 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 2 for 5. So I didn't do really well, but, in the co-main and the main, I did, both of them correct. Now let's talk about Baisan Guru versus Susakayev. It was an amazing fight. I mean, Baisan Guru versus Eric Nolan. Now, obviously, these guys just started into the UFC. Eric Nolan, I don't know where he was from before, but, he had some really good knockouts I saw. And Baisan Guru, he had that sick KO in the Dana White Contender Series. I mean, this guy's these kicks are nasty, dude. I don't know how exactly he throws them, but they just slice into you, and they slice into Eric Nolan a bit. And Baisan Guru, he is a middleweight. He is big, he is tall, he is great. I didn't like in the first round, he was kind of playing around a bit. He didn't take Eric Nolan that seriously. And Eric Nolan has really good boxing. His boxing is really nice. He was landing some really strong combinations up top. It wasn't never really rocking Susakayev, but especially in the second round, Susakayev, he was able to light it up, and, he was able to flow on top of Eric Nolan so much. And he just also looked noticeably bigger than Eric Nolan. And I think Eric Nolan should really go down to welterweight. I think with that type of boxing will be really amazing. And he was able to get the submission. It was really just that simple. And also Susakayev, his kicks, bro, his kicks are slicing. He was able to kick Eric Nolan in the knee, and you could see he wobbled him there. It was really bad. And just the strength that Susakayev has. Like, this guy's going. He's only 24 years old, fighting like this. This guy has an amazing future in this middle in the UFC. It's looking really good for him. So by the way, I have Susakayev winning anyways. And then Gerald Mearshart versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Now, I was watching this fight live, and I thought that Jared Mearshart was going to win because I thought he was a crafty bet. He's been around the game, he knows how this works, but boy, was I wrong. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, he was just faster. He had faster hands, he had that youth, and, Gerald Mearshart, I saw that the left hand was open for him, and, he didn't really take it, and, he was just being, stuck on the feet. He wanted to take this fight to the ground. He really, really wanted to because he obviously shines there, but Mikhail Oleksiejczuk just shoved that off. Gerald Mearshart is just old. Like, he's an old man now, and he's going to keep on losing to these young, faster guys. You understand? Like Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, who was on a really bad losing streak, before he got here, before he got this win, which he really needed. And also, he's a fighting nerd, so I didn't know that as well. So, shout out to Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, and I think Gerald Mearshart is just really retired at this stage. And Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. This fight went exactly. This was probably my best pick of the night because I did pick Alexander Hernandez. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make my pick videos because I mentioned to you guys in my video that I had school and stuff, but I did have, these were my picks that I had written down. Alexander Hernandez, dude, ever since I saw UFC Seattle earlier this year, I think, dude, this guy's boxing is amazing. The way he's usually the shorter guy, but the way he gets his timing to get in range, to get into your face, close the distance, and land those devastating shots happened to Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper was long, he was rangy, he was using his range, but Chase Hooper was just bad defensively. He was just bad defensively on the feet, and he tried shooting for a takedown, didn't work, but, well-deserved win for Alexander Hernandez. Chase Hooper needs to clean up his stand-up, his defense especially. And now for the last fight, Edson Barboza versus Drakkar Klose. Now, Edson Barboza, like, for being, I think, almost a 4-year-old, he's about 40 at this stage, he's still in amazing shape, he's still a good kickboxer, and Edson Barboza, I mean, for being 4 years old and still being in that type of shape is definitely impressive. But, the Drakkar Klose was just, in my opinion, he was a bit better, using the clinch, and, just was able to get the win. He was it was kind of stockier, but ultimately, the younger guy's going to win. Anyways, now let's do some matchmaking. This was mainly a middleweight card. For middleweights, it had huge middleweight implications. Now Hamzat Chimaev is the champion. I don't know who beats Hamzat Chimaev. Now, obviously, the winner of Imavov and Perhalo is going to fight for the title. But for Dricus du Plessis is never going to be the champion ever again. I said this before. I said this guy benefited. Dricus, he benefited from having really stylistically good matchups. He fought these older guys who were one-dimensional strikers or something along those lines, and he was able to, finagle his way into winning. But especially against these new kids on the block, these new, fresh, young kids on the block who have amazing striking and nasty ground games of themselves, like an Imavov, like a Perhalo, like a Hernandez, and even a Brendan Allen. Those guys are going to beat Dricus du Plessis. Now Dricus du Plessis could probably beat a Marvin Vettori or a Paulo Costa, maybe even an Abus Magomedov. He could probably beat those guys. But especially these young fresh kids coming up, like Anthony Hernandez, like Imavov and Allen, these guys are super, super duper good, and these guys are legitimately good at wrestling or jiu-jitsu or just countering that type of stuff. And we really saw how you beat Dricus du Plessis. You mix in the grappling, and I think that a lot of the future losses he's going to have are going to be some sort of mixture of somebody mixing that in and using that against him, and that was that, for Sean Strickland's busy going saying he can grapple. No, he can't. He can grapple. Comes out would first round submit him, And for Adesanya, I don't know who Adesanya should fight next. I'm not sure. But for Dricus, I think Dricus should fight Anthony Hernandez. I think that's not a bad fight at all, especially after, whoever wins between Rainier de Ritter and Imavov, that after that person gets their title shot, I think whoever wins between Anthony Hernandez and Dricus, if he's able to get the win over Anthony Hernandez, which I don't think so, he'll be able to win. Robin Whittaker, I think he should fight down the rankings. I think he should fight somebody like maybe I don't even know who. I don't really know who. I think he should fight down the rankings somewhere, maybe even outside the rankings. Same story with Jared Cannonier. I think Brendan Allen, especially after that win, I think Brendan Allen and Rainier de Ritter is in a bad matchup, or maybe even Rainier de Ritter and Adesanya wouldn't be bad, or even with Strickland. I don't know. Those are also great matchups as well. But honestly, I don't think there's anybody who can beat Khamzat. I just don't think so. I think we really showed that Khamzat is more smart than we were giving him credit for. He's more adaptable than he was getting credit for. But I also don't think that Khamzat will ever fight like that ever again. Per se, I think that was very specifically for Dricus, because Dricus is, like I said, he's a big, powerful guy. And Dricus has an amazing gas tank. People are saying that he looked tired, which he did, but he has this amazing ability to just keep on pushing through, and Khamzat just neutralized him completely, and just made Dricus look like a baby on the floor. There, he made him look like a helpless baby, and Dricus had zero answers. And I think this is great because Key's coach Morton Visser was tearing into Khamzat, saying, "Hey, you stand up, he's stealable. You stand up as this, and blah 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 blah." And just I think this was a really great moment for Dricus and his coaches, just a humbling moment that they deserve, because especially his coach. No, Dricus was fine. Obviously, he's a competitor. He'll talk his shit. I don't really have a problem with that. But his coach was insufferable in the embedded stuff. Just tearing on Khamzat and stuff. Even some of his training partners calling Khamzat a Chechen, whatever that Sean Strickland likes calling him. Like, I think they deserve this loss, and the burden really lies on Dricus. Dricus was like, if I get taken down, I can just stand up. Why didn't he stand up this time? He couldn't, because the grappling was just it was just night and day. Night and day difference. And really, I think this was an amazing matchup. And I also think that Khamzat being the champion, this makes the division a bit more interesting, because now imagine if Adesanya somehow gets a win somewhere. Imagine if maybe Sean Strickland gets a win somewhere, maybe a win or two, I don't know where. And imagine how that press conference is going to be. Imagine the build up to that fight with Sean Strickland knowing how he is. You get the idea. It opens up a lot of fresh matchups, because if DDP won, he would have already low-key beat everybody at this stage. He beat Adesanya, he beat Strickland. Now, I didn't think that Dricus was going to stay on top forever, because the grappling was going to get exposed eventually. But I think that this is really great, because Khamzat opens up a lot of fresh matchups. Now, that was the video, you guys. Thanks for watching. For those who did, it was an amazing fight card. Super historic, definitely the best fight card of the year. I will make my predictions for Zhang versus Walker, on who I think is going to be able to win, and yeah, guys, that was that. Amazing. See you guys on the next one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.